Loneliness is one of the most common human experiences, yet we treat it like a flaw. In today's world, this impulse only intensifies. We scroll constantly, reply, try to stay busy, but rooms just still feel too big. Like it's a place built for connection where no one's home. We just see loneliness as broken, like this crumpled owl origami with a bent nose and wing. But what if these fragments, silence, the ache, are the starting point for something else? Something unexpected, like a rainbow after a storm. What if loneliness wasn't just absence? What if it was a crucible, a pressure-filled space where something essential begins to form? That's what I've started to understand. This project explores how that kind of solitude, painful as it can be, has the potential to become creative, grounding, and even freeing. And it starts with learning how to stay. In Pema Chodron's writing, loneliness isn't something to erase. It's something to meet gently. She calls it a naked feeling, a space where we face the parts of ourselves we usually keep buried in our hearts. But if we stop resisting, Chodron says, that vulnerability becomes a doorway to inner clarity. That clarity grows not just with people, but with place. Barry Lopez writes how belonging doesn't come just by being seen from others. It comes from knowing and being known by the world around you. We only become a part of a place when we move gently through it, when we listen, and we let go of ego and our past emotions. Confronting vulnerability can be one of the greatest challenges. I understand that. In my sophomore year, the betrayals of people who had doxed me kept replaying over and over in my head, and it was so difficult to confront that hurt, that pain. But when I actually decided to do that calmly, sitting with that discomfort for many, many months, taking quiet walks, I was rebuilding my sense of belonging in stillness. And clarity came to my mind, not just about who I was as a person, but also who truly had my back. In that process, loneliness softens. It doesn't become just an absence anymore, it becomes a presence. And from that kind of quiet, it's the birthplace for new ideas to form. One of these ideas came from a woman in the 1800s who stood at the edge of science, Ada Lovelace, who lived between logic and lyricism. In stillness, she imagined something no one else had ever done so before. A future where machines could not just calculate, but create. Her vision blended logic with poetry, and her notes on the analytical engine became the foundation for modern computing. Alone in my thoughts, the urge to merge both sides of tradition and invention just grew louder. And Studio Ghibli films helped me see this with clarity. Characters wandering through the quiet, yet still transforming. The music, like in Merry-Go-Round of Life in Howl's Moving Castle, spins through memory, magic, and war. Nothing is just one thing. Everything blurs. And that's what loneliness can do. It softens boundaries. Kevin Alushila felt this too. A cellist and beatboxer, stuck between two worlds, classical and hip-hop. He couldn't figure out how to approach either for such a long time, but in solitude, he learned not to choose, but to combine. Prelude from Bach Cello Suite No. 1 is a perfect example of how the beat and bow aren't fighting. They're fusing to create perfect harmony. And one of my personal favorite songs, Dark Winter, which released very recently, that same principle applies. He stopped asking which version of himself fit, and just created. That helped me stop hiding parts of who I am. I have indie music in my blood, but I'm trained in opera. For a long time, I didn't know where I belonged, but maybe that's the point. Like Lovelace, like Ghibli, and like Alushila, I'm learning that loneliness isn't just silence. It's a space to vent and to belong to yourself. In Song of Solomon, Toni Morrison writes about emotional detachment. The characters aren't alone. They're just unanchored, surrounded by stuff, but no real substance or roots. That hit me because sometimes the hardest kind of loneliness isn't dramatic, it's numb. You don't realize it until you're stuck, repeating thoughts and disconnected from true joy. But Morrison shows us that ache can become a trigger, a call to break patterns. When Milkman seeks his family past, he uncovers identity through stories, through listening, through solitude. And his loneliness becomes a journey not just to find where he comes from, but to decide who he wants to be. You want to fly? You got to give up the shit that weighs you down. And maybe loneliness asks all of us the same thing, not to escape it, but to learn how to fly like the legend said, because of it. Holden Caulfield in The Catcher in the Rye hides behind sarcasm and judgment because being vulnerable feels too risky. I get that. There's times I start sharing parts of myself, like my love for Pokemon and opera, because I feared being laughed at. So I shut down. But that kind of loneliness isn't healing, it's hiding. Holden shows us what happens when we stay stuck, afraid to connect, but more afraid to be real. It's funny, don't ever tell anybody anything. If you do, you start missing everybody. Loneliness doesn't vanish when we shut people out. It only changes when we let people in. And that's the hard truth. So, after all of this, maybe loneliness isn't just about pain or disconnection. It's a crucible for transformation, a space to understand yourself far more deeply than anyone else could. With reflection and growth, it will eventually show up in the mirror. But what you do with that, how you live with it, is completely up to you.